if we just start with yourself and talking about the finance side of things. So obviously, this looks to be a very popular session by looking at some of the numbers. And I think people will be curious about how they can be financially supported at university, what advice and guidance we would give to make sure that they get off to the perfect start. Money is a consideration. I suppose when we think about university, we think about tuition fees, we think about accommodation costs, cost of living, as well as funding your social side as a student. So Kathy, why should maybe students who are in year 13 or year 14 right now start thinking about finance in particular to university?
I would say the main reason to start thinking about it early is that you don't automatically get as much funding as you would necessarily need to actually live on. Students assume that they'll apply for funding and what they get is going to cover their accommodation or their transport costs if they're traveling instead. It's going to cover all their course costs. It's going to cover the food, activities, everything they need as a student. And quite often, that's not the case. There's very few students who actually get enough to cover all of their costs. And there's no point in waiting until you begin uni and find out your exact figures to realise, actually, I have a shortfall. This is only going to cover my rent, and I now need to find how I'm going to fuel my car, pay for insurance, run a phone, pay for Wi-Fi, pay for food, pay for a few nights out. There's no point in waiting until it actually happens to then start working out how to deal with that. So if at year 13, year 14, you're aware of that, you can start putting a plan in place. You can look at, maybe you can get a weekend job between now and then, start putting away birthday or Christmas money if needs be. Look at things that you can be doing between now and then, just so you have a bit of savings set aside, you have a safety net there. And also look at how you can maybe prepare for uni in terms of just being a bit more economical with it. You don't need to arrive at uni and instantly have every night out that's going. You don't have to take part in everything. You aren't going to have to arrive and fully kit out a house with furniture and saucepans and all of these things. Some students arrive sort of, and it's the biggest amount of money they've ever had in their lives, and they're so keen to get it spent. Between now and then, you can maybe start to do a wee bit of research. What are you actually going to need to spend money on? What can you get handed down from older brothers and sisters who've been to uni already? What can you get from people who've maybe done your course before and might give you a couple of free or cheap secondhand textbooks? It's just starting to look at things early in terms of what money you're going to need and how you're going to make all of those things a bit less expensive when the time does come.
I have to say, Kathy, I am absolutely guilty, or was guilty, when you talk about going to university. And you know, this is like your new home for the first time, and you want to buy, you know, new bed sheets and new pillows and like new cushions for the sofa that you're only going to use for a year. Like, you want to make your home. And yes, I agree, it can take up a lot of your budget. I remember buying like framed artwork, you know, relatively inexpensive, but stuff I just didn't need to make my bedroom look really, really cozy. And I think you're absolutely right. There's probably things you could probably pick up, you know, from home. Maybe your mum maybe giving away, or you could go to the local charity shop and see what you can pick up for a bargain. But yes, totally guilty of that.
Definitely. And you see students turning up, like maybe with their parents in the car, and they've like the full works of all the saucepans and all like a lovely new dinner set, and they've all this stuff, and literally they go into halls and go, oh, that's all here already. So that's already a couple of £100 they didn't need to spend. Just so that bit of research can help with that. And you get excited. And yes, you say you want a nice grown-up bed linen that you've picked yourself, and isn't the stuff your mum picked at home, when you want artwork that shows who you are so all your friends can know you're cool and all those things. But in first year, you start uni, you change and you develop a lot. So you could spend your fortune to get all these posters and all these things and all these cool clothes, get to uni and suddenly have an epiphany that, oh my God, now I'm away from home, I'm this completely different person, and actually I don't like any of that stuff anymore, and now I want a whole new style of clothes, I want different posters, I want to do different things. So I would say it's kind of in terms of spending money, yes, don't be going out and buying a load of stuff that you might not need, but also don't be buying stuff too early. Kind of get your foot in the door, see what your accommodation is like, see what you actually need, and have a wee bit of time at university. Because I mean, some people kind of arrive thinking it's going to be a certain way. They've seen it in movies. I'm going to dress like this, I'm going to be this person, I'm going to do all these things, and they arrive and kind of go, I have the wardrobe of all the entire wrong clothes because I forgot that I'm going to Korean campus and not America, and I can't wear all these nice things. I just need a coat, and I don't need all this fashionable stuff. And it's kind of, yeah, you kind of need to get your foot in the door, get in for a week or two, and see realistically what you need and what should be spending money on, and getting the important things paid for first. So don't be spending money on nice pictures and nice clothes until you know you've your rent covered, or you've your car insurance covered, or kind of the really important things, and you've money set aside to pay for food and things that you definitely need.
Yeah, and I suppose to bring it right back, I suppose we're in at the, well, not so much the deep end, but to bring it right back even before we consider university, or we get to university. I think when people, particularly students, they think about university and they do hear things like tuition fees and accommodation costs, a lot of them can be put off just by that kind of talk around money. And, I remember thinking at the time when I was in year 14, like, how do I even afford university? And at one point I was almost put off because I didn't know about, the financial help. Could you maybe just touch on how students can finance university? And I'm
Yeah.
probably cognizant that we might have viewers here from the Republic of Ireland as well. So
Mm-hmm.
if you could touch on that, what's available to
Yeah.
them?
Yeah, no problem. So for students from Northern Ireland, you apply to Student Finance NI, and it's nice and straightforward. Generally, that paperwork and information is given to you by careers guys. They can kind of make sure you know what you're filling in and what you do. Um, if you are ROI or EU, it's a bit different. So you can apply to Student Finance NI for your tuition fee loan. You don't get a maintenance loan, but you can apply to a scheme called SUSI for a maintenance grant. So it works a bit different. It's similar to what you can get in terms of your fees being covered, but with maintenance it is a wee bit different. So it's worth having a look at that stuff in advance, because maintenance loan is kind of what you use for your living costs. So knowing that in advance means you can kind of budget and prepare for possibly you won't get that same amount. If you are Scottish, English, or Welsh student, it's like Student Finance NI, except it's the English, Welsh, or Scottish version. Very, very similar process. So while you're saying some people see it as, this is a big amount of money, I have to pay fees, I have to have living costs, I have to pay for all these things, is it worth doing it, or can I afford this? If you are eligible for any sort of student loans, you can definitely afford this, because it's a bad way to say it, and this isn't a great thing to say, it's not real money, and it's not a real loan. This isn't a loan that's going to be, it's not recognized on your credit score. It's not recognized as debt. It isn't money that somebody's going to turn up tomorrow and say, right, you need to start paying that back. It's kind of, we always say to students, think of it as a tax. So you won't pay a penny of it until you meet a certain earning threshold, which is about £19,500. Changes every so often, but it's around that at the minute. So you won't pay a penny unless you start to earn that amount of money. So if you never earn that amount of money, if you leave university and marry a millionaire and never have to work a day in your life, you will never pay any of your student loan back. It'll just disappear. If you earn that amount of money, if you reach, say, you after a couple of years get into a graduate job and are making that 19 and a half, it's a tiny amount comes off your paycheck every month, and it comes off where your tax comes off, where your national insurance comes off. It comes off before tax. And that's why we say think of it as a tax. Think of it as your studies were funded, and as a result, you now earn enough money that you can pay slightly more tax. Because that's all it really is. It's not a loan in the usual kind of terms. And that's what I'm always really wary of, that putting students off, because they think of it in that kind of way. And we would sometimes see students who would say, well, no, I've been saving up all through school, so I'm just going to pay my fees outright. And you're going, but you're kind of possibly throwing that money away, because your fees you might never have to pay back if you never meet that threshold, or you get to gradually pay them back over the length of your career, instead of paying that chunk of money now that might be more useful to you to pay your rent, buy a car, do whatever kind of big expense you need. The other thing is, students would say they did do that, say they use that chunk of money, the savings, whatever they have, something happens down the line that they need a chunk of money. So they need a car, they need expensive car insurance, they need whatever. If you then take a loan, it's never going to be as good a rate as what your student loan would have been. So there's no point in kind of swapping one for the other. It's never going to be as good a rate or as good a terms. Student loans, it's a bad word saying it's a loan, because it doesn't work like a loan. It isn't debt. It doesn't work in that way. It's just the wording of it. And unfortunately, it's the government wording of it that we have no influence on. I would say to anybody who kind of wants more information on it, if you've heard of Martin Lewis, Money Saving Expert website, he explains it amazingly.
Yes,
He breaks it down. He shows you exactly, if you earn this, this is what you pay. It shows you exactly how much you need to be
yes,
earning before you will ever pay it off. And generally, student loans at the minute, I said, it changes every few years. The government adjusts it, but at the minute it's 25 years. If you don't have it paid off completely in 25 years, it vanishes. So lots of people, even on quite good paying jobs, because you don't leave university and instantly be getting £60,000 a year. You build your way up. Quite often, by the time you've built yourself up to that threshold, 25 years has passed and they've written it off. There's very few people who actually pay it all back, and those who do can only afford to, because that loan allowed them to go to university and get the qualifications to get that job. So
yeah.
it balances out. It isn't something to stress about. It's there. It's, as I said, it treated as a tax that you pay for having got a great education and got a better job as a result.
So just to recap then, Kathy, regardless of whether you're from Northern Ireland, the south of Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales, some student finance body can't speak today, relative to their region, will
Uh-huh.
cover their tuition fees until
Yeah,
they graduate and are earning over a certain amount of money.
and earn over a certain amount.
They
Yeah,
may not ever have to pay that back in
you
full
might
or
never pay it back or at all.
and I,
The other thing is, if you are a nursing student, it's not through those, it's through BSO. So similar, you follow a set process. Your fees are completely paid for you. You never have to pay those back. And you get a bursary, which covers all your sort of, with nursing and courses like that, you have a lot of extra expenses. So you get a sort of monthly bursary that covers all of that. If it's an AHP course, so allied health, so that would be like so physiotherapy, occupational health, stuff like that. Um, you might get additional things. So again, your fees will get completely paid for you. It's not something you ever pay back. And you might, based on sort of means testing and stuff like that, you might get grants and awards that so it's slightly different on certain courses. The average student's just going to go straight through student finance I and it'd be really direct. But when you're looking at your course and you're finding out about your course, when you look at your course on the university web pages, it tells you exactly how this course is funded and what bit you apply to, and it's really, really straightforward. They generally are all means tested, so if you can get your parents to include the information, if they don't have the information, they're going to assume your parents are minted and are going to help you lots and give you a lower bracket. So the more information you get your parents to put on and the more honest that is, the more likely you are to receive more money from that. The other thing I would say is, when you're applying through Student Finance and there's an option to tick a box to say you're happy for all of your information to be shared with the university. If you do that, we can check whether you qualify for widening access or any other bursaries. So we get halfway through first year and students say, my friend's got a bursary and I didn't. And we've no way of knowing whether that student's eligible for it, because their information never got as far as
yes.
us to be able to check that. So it's like anything on your applications where it says you can tick a box for this information to be shared with your university, do, because it just makes things happen. It means we can be doing stuff behind the scenes and you're not having to chase it up and worry about it at a later date.
Sure, and that'll actually, I think, reassure a lot of viewers that the tuition fee loan is kind of taken away that stress and is managed. Well, you might not ever have to pay it back.
Exactly.
I want to touch now just on the well-being side of things, Kathy, and I don't think Marie is able to join us, unfortunately.
No problem. I can answer all that stuff anyway. So
Yes,
well, I'm saying that I've set myself up now. You're going to pick a really tricky question,
yeah,
but
no,
technically I should be able to answer all that stuff.
no pressure at all, Kathy. So just maybe give us a sense of why well-being is important when thinking of university, and what support does your team offer students when they arrive with us?
Okay, so our team, while I focus on the student money bit, our team has guys who focus on mental health, with a team who focus on disability, and with people who just, we are well-being, but there's lots of areas and lots of concerns and lots of different things we do. Like I said, with your application for student finance, putting on it early that you're happy for the information to be shared for us to know everything about you. The same would we would say with your UCAS application. put on there that you want that information to be shared with the university, that you want to declare to university any extra needs you have, be it with any disabilities, any learning difficulties, any mental health difficulties, because the sooner we have that information, the sooner we can reach out to you as a prospective student, even before you start, to begin having a couple of meetings and getting stuff put in place. The reason Wellbeing exists within the university is that it's not all straightforward. Yes, everybody wants to go to university, have the best time ever, lots of parties, lots of crack, get a good education, lots of experiences, but that's not always straightforward for everybody. And if you're a student who maybe has a disability that makes some things a bit trickier, we want you to get that exact same experience as everybody else, and your disability not to impact that or change that in any way. We don't want any students to go through it, but it's a different experience because their disability, because their mental health, because they've stuff going on at home that's distracting or causing different problems. So we cover, like, it's the broadest range of things that students come to us for. And it's because we don't want any of those things to be an issue. We don't want any of those things to be a barrier. We don't want any of those things to stop a student finishing their degree or to get a lesser degree because these things were going on and they didn't have help, they didn't have support, or they didn't know what to do or who to turn to. So said this, the disability team will help students who have any, as long as you have something on paper to say this is what's going on, be it a disability or a long-term illness, and they can put lots of extra supports in place to make sure you're looked after, you have any extra help that you need. If it's mental health issues, again, we get that on paper, we put in supports that you need, and we can then sort of signpost you, because we have counselling services that we work with mental health practitioners on campus, with Mind Your Mood mental health teams, with stuff like that we work with and make sure everything is looked after. But equally, if it's just stuff going on that you just need to chat to somebody because you've arrived at uni and you don't know anyone and that's a bit scary, or you've arrived at uni and you really miss your mum and her cooking and her doing your washing, and you could just have stuff going on, or you're in a course where you're going, I don't like anybody, what am I going to do? I need to make friends and this is mad and I don't know, and it's all a bit weird, and I had all these friends and now they're somewhere else. There's so many kind of things you can feel a wee bit anxious about. And we have staff here dedicated just that you can go and have a good rant to them and a good chat, and it's pretty much, they look after that sort of well-being stuff where you don't have to have something on paper to say this is what's going on. You just need to chat to somebody impartial who knows the uni, who knows how everything works, and is just kind of not counselling as such, but just somebody you can have a good chat with who can kind of help you work things out and work things through. And they're great with students come to them for relationship problems, bullying issues, stuff going on at home, maybe addictions, everything. Like, if no matter what somebody comes to us with, there is somebody in our team who is the person that can work with that and help with that and signpost the correct services for that. That was a really big, broad answer.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And I think you touched on pretty much what I was going to ask you next, which was about like you arriving at university, and just that being a very daunting experience. I'm just even thinking about my own when I arrived. I'm not really sure I had any expectations, but when I arrived, it just like hit me, and the amount of students that I didn't know. And I always thought, I remember my first day at the Belfast campus, we were all lining up to get our student cards. I didn't know anybody. It didn't faze me at that point. But it was just when I got into my lecture groups, it really just hit me that I didn't know anybody. I'm here on my own. And then I felt really, really anxious, that really worried about, gosh, I'm here. I'm committed to this. I'm here for 3 years. I don't know if I'm going to last a week. Would you see many students in that kind of position knocking in your door, perhaps the first couple of weeks, saying, I'm struggling, I never had the courage actually to go to student support. I think typical man, just bottled it up and
just bottled it up. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. We're always very aware of saying to students, if you know we exist, there's nothing to stop you coming to see us. We like to make sure students know we exist even before they get to the university, even before they begin, they know we're there. Because you would hate for a student to be going through a lot of stuff and not knowing there's somewhere to turn to. The other thing is, come to us as early as you can. So if something's just annoying you a bit, it's not a big deal, it's not causing any problems, you're not missing classes or missing sleep over it, but it's just in your head. We always say then, come to us at that stage, because we want to help you and chat to you and work out what we can do to help before it gets to the point that you're missing a class over an issue, or you're missing sleep over an issue, or it is a problem. So be that stuff with your finances, or you think you might have maybe dyslexia, or you are not sort of fitting in with your class and you kind of don't really know who to turn to. Say to us on day one, because it means we can get support and help and have a chat with you and work out what we need to put in place as early as possible, not waiting until the end of a semester where you have exams coming up and it's actually at a point where you're going, right, this is now getting too much, this is a big deal and I don't know what to do and I have exams next week. So always try and come to us with anything as early as possible. But yeah, we do. We always know, expect at the beginning of a new year, there's going to be students come to us, because you be homesick and you find it all a bit weird, and you're so used in school to people saying, right, go here. You're in this room for 45 minutes. Right, now you're in that room for 45 minutes, and this is what you're going to do, and this is your homework, and somebody's going to check you've done your homework. And you're in school, you're very regimented, you have a very set timetable, and you know exactly what you have to do and when you have to do it. And some students can find it a real shock to the system, because some students arrive on campus and their timetable is literally 6 hours, and beyond that they're expected to go and study, and they don't really know where to start or what to do or how to put in their time. So we would sometimes have students come to us to say, this is just mad. I don't know what to do. I have 6 hours. Do I go home after that? What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
I've heard there's a library. What's that about? So we have really good study skills classes and things like that we put on for students who maybe they're just not used to the lack of structure and need just to get their head around how this works differently. And with lots of different wee groups and different stuff on and different stuff that we promote to students, and the likes of the Mind Your Mood programs that we have as well, to kind of help engage students, especially if it's all about new and daunting. They're great. So we've 2 placement students run that across the 4 campuses, and then they get ambassadors to help them run it. And it's just ongoing programs throughout the year to kind of get students engaging. It's called Mind Your Mood. It touches on mental health, but it isn't programs for students with mental health difficulties. It's programs for absolutely everybody. And it's just about, if everybody is really positive, gets together, does lots of stuff together, then everybody should have good mental health, and we're not having to get to the point where somebody is having difficulties that we have to deal with. So it's about engaging at the beginning and being part of something. And they run great stuff throughout the year. They've some unusual activities of bringing dogs in on campus, and there's Shetland pony a couple of years ago for some reason. They've all sorts of stuff going on and craft things going on, and runs around the campus, and we were out planting trees a couple of years ago. There's just, you don't know what they'll come up with next, and it's all student fed. So if students say, do you know what, I think it'd be great and uplifting for students if we all came and did this, they work with it. They see if it's something they can do and get students engaging in. So it's great. They're constantly doing fundraising stuff to kind of make that stuff possible. But they're very much, if enough students want to do something, they'll try and make it happen. So it's a great thing to engage with. And just a great way to sort of meet other students and get sort of past those sort of initial kind of nerves of this is all new and strange and I don't sort of know what I'm doing or where I'm going, and I've never lived away from home before, and all those kind of nervous things, stuff like that. And then the societies, as you know, going from being in the union before, they're just brilliant. Some of them are amazing. I can't believe some of the different societies come up with. Since when I was at uni, they were all very straightforward and academic and scary, whereas now there's like all different gaming ones and crafting ones, and there's something for every sport you can think of, and they're brilliant way for students to kind of get out of their bubble and sort of meet other people, because it's not just about meeting people who do the same course as you or live in the same block of flats as you. It's meeting people from all different things, so it's a great way to do that.
Yeah, they're very inventive for sure. I want to turn now to learning needs and disabilities. But before I do, I just want to remind people that this is an interactive session. So if you have any curious questions you want to pitch to Kathy as a member from the Student Health and Wellbeing team, do use that facility. If there's anything you want to know about money, well-being, mental health, or disability, which we're about to cover now, please do use that facility. So touching on learning needs and learning difficulties and additional needs maybe students have at school, whether it's dyslexia or dyspraxia, or if they get additional time in school, does that carry over to university automatically, or what way does that work?
So nothing carries automatically. And that, unfortunately, that's a mistake some students do make. So they'll turn up to us the day before an exam to say, I'm just checking, I'm getting an extra hour tomorrow. We're going, who are you and why do you need an extra hour? Because this is the first we're hearing of it. So when you put in your applications on your UCAS form, if there's any support you got already through school, if you've any disabilities, if you've any learning difficulties, if you've any needs at all, make sure you put all that on your application and tick the box to say you want that information shared with us. If we get that information through early, we will, usually around May or June actually, before you've even begun, we send you a form to fill in, give us more information, and that gets the ball rolling. That we'll then arrange for you to have an appointment with one of our advisors who can then work out what help you're going to need at uni. So we, as I said, they go out in about May or June, where we kind of are a bit, we'll chase you a bit for it. So if you don't get back to us straight away, we're going, please don't turn up in September without this fix. So we'll kind of hound you a wee bit till we get that. If you don't want to engage and you don't want the support, that is fine, but we try our best to have it every student when they begin in September. If they need extra help, if they need extra support, if they need anything new or different, we try and have that ready and waiting for them when their course begins. Not always straightforward. Sometimes students have managed to stay under the radar all through school, and it's only when they begin a course and it's something a wee bit different that actually it kind of shows up that maybe there is dyslexia or dyspraxia or something there that wasn't noticed before. And if that's the case, students can come to us, we can get them referred for assessment, we can make sure all that's checked out, and at that point then sort of start the ball rolling on meeting with an advisor and getting supports and getting everything put in place. But I would say don't assume anything that happened in school is going to happen in university. If you got extra time, if you got to do your exams in a different sort of format, or maybe we have some students who don't sit an exam in like the hall of 300 people, they sit it in a smaller room because they have anxiety or because of health needs or whatever. If you've anything like that from school, let us know as quick as possible. Because if you imagine we're trying to fit exams or some sort of assessment for 22,000 students, within us an amount of, this is the length of the timetable for exams and this is the amount of space. So we need lots of early notice of, do people need extra time? Do people need extra rooms? Do people need extra sort of things put in place? So yeah, turning up the day before an exam isn't a great idea. The sooner we know those things, the sooner we can make sure everything's up and running, because you don't want it to be an extra stress. You don't want to be studying and also worrying, when I go into this exam tomorrow, is everything going to be ready and in place and will they know my needs? So let us know that stuff nice and early.
Perfect. Well, Kathy, I'm afraid we are out of time. I don't see any questions coming in, but maybe just a final word from you for viewers now in terms of a final piece of advice for them considering university, and where they can where they can contact, or what email address they can contact if they have any questions.
Yeah, no problem. So the main thing, and I feel like I've probably said it a dozen times through all of this, everything is about doing stuff really early. So it's looking at what money you might get as soon as, like, try and suss that out as quick as you can, so you know how much money you're going to need. If you're planning to rent, start looking now at what rental costs might be. If you're planning to travel, start looking now at what your fuel and your insurance might be. If you have disabilities, mental health issues, this need, let us know as early what we need to do. Everything is about speaking to us as quick and as early as possible. And if during your time at university something's up, something's annoying you, any issues at all, come to us as quick as you can so we can start putting stuff in place as quick as we can. There's no point in a student waiting until crisis point before coming to us. If we could have saved them ever getting to crisis point had we known the issue a wee bit earlier. And kind of hand in hand with that, I always say to students, when you get your degree, it doesn't say on it, you got it first, but you went to student wellbeing and they helped you and we did this and we did that. You either get it first, or whatever place you get, whether you get help from us to do that or not, doesn't go anywhere. Nobody knows that. There's no point in coming out of university with a third that you got all the way yourself and nobody ever helped you. If you could have come out with a first, had you just come to us and got a bit of financial help or wellbeing help or disability help, employers at the end of it see what degree you got. They don't care what you needed to do to get there, if you know what I mean. So if coming to us and getting that bit of extra help in place is going to make the difference of how good a degree you get and how good an experience you get at university, then come to us and make sure you get all the help you can.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Kathy. And I'm just going to put it in your email address into the chat there. So studentwellbeing@ulster.ie.
Perfect.
If you have
Yeah.
any questions at all, wellbeing, mental health, money related or disability related, give these guys a call. They're more than happy to
Yeah.
take questions. So listen, Kathy, thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate it. I hope everybody found that insightful and useful as they prepare for university. So
Hopefully
thank you,
so.
Kathy, for the rest of your day.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Conan. Cheers. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye bye, everybody.